Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're getting stuck into something really quite profound and I think particularly relevant for those of us in the medical field.
Indeed.
You know those cases we sometimes hear about or maybe even encounter the really perplexing spontaneous remissions, where patients just seem to defy all the odds, making these sudden, almost miraculous recoveries.
Yeah, those phenomena that challenge our conventional understanding. The placebo effect is another powerful example, isn't it?
Absolutely. It really makes you wonder, what if those events weren't quite so spontaneous or mysterious after all? What if our minds, our consciousness, actually hold the keys to unlocking profound health, influencing our very biology?
That's the core question we're exploring, isn't it?
It is. Our deep dive today is right at that fascinating intersection: neuroscience, quantum physics, and personal transformation. We're going to explore some, well, truly groundbreaking insights into how our thoughts, our emotions, our state of being aren't just side effects of biology.
But potentially powerful forces that can reshape it.
Exactly. Reshape our health, our lives. And to help guide us through this, well, quite intricate landscape, we're absolutely delighted to have Professor Mo Imam with us, a renowned expert in this very area.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Our mission today, really, is to try and understand the mechanics behind personal change. What's the potential for us to live more coherent, healthier, more fulfilling lives, both for ourselves and perhaps in how we approach our professional work?
I think this understanding holds immense implications,
Mm-hmm.
especially, as you say, for the medical community, those right at the forefront of health and well-being. It could genuinely revolutionize how we think about patient care and even our own vitality.
It's a huge idea, though, and it really does challenge how we've traditionally understood reality, doesn't it?
Fundamentally.
Because for centuries, our view was largely mechanistic. You think of Descartes, Newton, this idea of the universe as a kind of giant clockwork machine. Mind and matter were seen as totally separate things.
And reality felt quite predetermined, solid, predictable.
Yes. But what's so fascinating now is how modern science, particularly quantum physics, has just completely shaken that foundation. Could you maybe unpack that fundamental shift for us?
Absolutely. That traditional view, the mechanistic one you described, really saw matter as solid, inert stuff, independent. But the monumental shift, arguably starting with Einstein and Ivesey, showed something radically different.
Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared.
Hmm.
We all know the equation, but the implication.
The implication was profound. It demonstrated, quite simply, that energy and matter aren't separate at all. They're interconvertible. Two sides of the same coin, if you will. Matter can become energy. Energy can become matter.
Which directly contradicts that old Newtonian view.
Completely. It introduced a new understanding. Reality is far more fluid, more interconnected than we ever thought. Not just solid stuff.
So, if matter and energy are interchangeable, what does that actually mean for something like an atom? We all learned the model in school, didn't we? The little solar system, solid bits whizzing around.
Precisely. Those old models, the toothpick and styrofoam bowl constructions, perhaps.
Yes, figure 1A, as it were.
Exactly. They're now completely outdated. Quantum physics reveals something quite astonishing. Atoms are almost entirely empty space. Vast amounts of it.
It's hard to get your head around that scale.
It is. Imagine an atom expanded to the size of a huge football stadium. The nucleus, where nearly all the mass is, would be no bigger than a tiny pea right in the center.
So everything, my body, this chair, the air, it's not really solid.
Fundamentally, no. It's comprised of vast fields of energy, vibrating as incredibly complex frequency patterns. Information, really. All matter is essentially more no-thing pure energy than something particles, like shifting from figure 1b towards 1c in conceptual terms.
The reality isn't fixed and predetermined. It's more like potential energy patterns.
That's a great way to put it. It challenges that fixed notion. Everything is in a constant state of flux, vibrating. For those of us in medicine, thinking about this shift is radical, moving from just treating a broken physical part
to understanding the energetic blueprint behind it.
Exactly. And that opens up entirely new avenues for intervention, for healing.
Yeah.
It reframes the whole picture.
That really does redefine solid. Okay, so if matter itself is this fluid, energetic thing, this potential, what about consciousness? Our awareness, what happens when we, as observers, interact with this quantum world? Because this is where it gets, well, really interesting, doesn't it?
This is perhaps one of the most profound and debated aspects, the observer effect.
Right. Tell us about that.
Well, physicists discovered that tiny subatomic particles, like electrons, don't actually exist in a fixed state before they're observed. They exist as waves of probability. Think of figure 1D.
Waves of probability, so they could be anywhere.
In a sense, yes. They exist potentially as everything and no things simultaneously, everywhere and nowhere
Didn't we look?
until an observer focuses attention, tries to measure or locate that electron. At that moment, the wave of probability collapses into a definite particle in a specific location. It's called the collapse of the wave function.
So our active observation, our consciousness itself, plays a direct role in creating physical reality. Well, it's mind-boggling.
It is rather staggering, isn't it? The implication is that if these fundamental particles can exist in infinite possible states, then we, as conscious observers, are potentially capable of collapsing infinite possible realities into existence.
Including the realities we desire, like health.
Theoretically, yes. If your mind can influence the appearance of an electron, why not the appearance of any possibility? The quantum field, in this view, already contains the reality or you are healthy or your patient has recovered. It's waiting for a conscious observer to tune into it, to collapse it into experience.
That shifts the paradigm for patient care enormously. Not just managing symptoms, but potentially co-creating health possibilities.
Precisely. And there's fascinating, though perhaps controversial, research suggesting this effect might even transcend linear time. Dr. Leonard Levitchi's study from 2000, for instance.
What did that involve?
It was a double-blind trial with sepsis patients. Half were prayed for, half weren't. The prayed-for group did significantly better. Less fever, shorter stays. Standard intercessory prayer study, you might think.
Okay, but what was the twist?
The twist was when the prayers were said. The prayers were for patients who had been hospitalized 4 to 10 years before the experiment even took place.
So praying for people in the past. And it worked.
The data suggested it did. It points towards this non-linear nature of reality, where intention, thought, feeling might affect events regardless of our usual concept of time. It suggests the potential for healing exists outside our standard temporal framework.
That's quite an astonishing thought. So, okay, if our observation, our consciousness can influence reality, maybe even across time, what does this mean for our everyday thoughts and feelings? How do we actually talk to this quantum field, especially when we're aiming for specific outcomes like health for ourselves or our patients?
We communicate primarily through our thoughts and our feelings. It's a two-part signal, really.
Okay, how does that work?
Think of thoughts as carrying an electrical charge. Brain impulses are electrical signals. We measure them with EEGs, don't we?
Yes, standard practice.
So those thoughts, our intentions, are the electrical signals we send out into the field. They're what we want.
But you said it's a two-part signal. What's the other part?
Feelings. Our feelings carry a magnetic charge. They are what magnetically draw experiences, events, back to us. They complete the circuit.
So thoughts send the signal out, feelings draw the response back.
In essence, yes. Together, how you think and how you feel creates your state of being. And that state of being generates a unique electromagnetic signature that influences the quantum field.
Which means it's the combination, the alignment of thought and feeling that's truly powerful. It's not just about thinking positive then.
Precisely not. That's a common misconception. The HeartMath Institute did a remarkable study back in 2003 that illustrates this perfectly.
What did they find?
They had subjects skilled in generating heart coherence, strong, elevated emotions like love, appreciation. They gave them vials of DNA. When these subjects just generated the positive emotions, nothing significant happened to the DNA. The feeling alone wasn't enough.
Okay.
Then a second group not only generated those heightened emotions, but also held a clear intention, a thought to either wind or unwind the DNA strands. And that group produced statistically significant changes. They were able to wind or unwind the DNA by as much as 25%. Critically, a third group who only held the intention, the thought, without the elevated emotion, saw no change either.
So it really proves the point. Neither thought alone nor feeling alone works. It has to be both aligned.
Unequivocally, the quantum field responds to that coherent signal when thoughts and feelings are aligned, broadcasting the same message.
Which means if your thoughts are saying, perhaps I want to be healthy, but your body, through its memorized feelings, is screaming, I feel sick, I feel defeated, you're sending a mixed signal, like static on the radio.
It's exactly like static. Or think of incoherent light from a regular bulb versus a focused laser beam. Figure 1F illustrates this well. Coherent waves, in phase, rhythmic, are powerful.
While incoherent, mixed signals achieve nothing.
Precisely. Which is why gratitude is so vital in this process. And it's not just an intellectual thank you.
It's the feeling of gratitude.
It's feeling as though your desired future has already happened.
Yeah.
You have to embody that emotion so completely that your body, which understands feelings, believes the event has already occurred. Your body needs to be emotionally convinced that the future you want is happening now.
That shifts the internal state first.
Interesting. Now, many of us, and I think this is especially true in demanding professions like medicine, often feel, well, stuck, caught in repetitive loops.
Yes, seeing the same patterns play out again and again.
Exactly. Professionally, personally, the same challenges, the same reactions seem to crop up. What does this deep dive reveal about why that happens? And more importantly, what it takes to actually break free? This is a core challenge, and it's deeply rooted in our conditioning. The key concept is that most people are conditioned to think equal to their environment, their body, and time. These are what we call the big three.
The big three. Okay. Environment, body, time. So, starting with environment, you're saying our external world dictates our internal state. We're sort of prisoners of our surroundings.
To a large extent, yes.
Yeah.
Our brain effectively becomes a record of our past environment. Think about your daily routine, the commute, the hospital, the familiar faces, the specific problems you encounter.
Right. They trigger familiar thoughts, familiar responses.
Exactly. They activate the same neural circuits day in, day out. This causes us to think and react in familiar ways, all derived from past memories wired into the brain. So if your thoughts create your reality and you keep thinking the same thoughts because your environment keeps triggering them.
You keep creating the same reality. More of the same.
Precisely. Your outer world, its problems, conditions, circumstances, constantly influences how you think and feel internally. It's a feedback loop, like being swept along by a current. To change, you have to somehow think and act greater than those circumstances, become independent of them.
Okay, that's the environment. What about the body? How does our physiology trap us in these loops?
Our bodies are heavily involved, perhaps more subconsciously than we realize. We operate based on a vast set of memorized behaviors, thoughts, and emotional reactions. They run like programs in the background.
Like habits we don't even notice.
Exactly. And this is why just thinking positive often fails. Deep-seated negativity or limiting patterns can reside chemically in the body. It becomes accustomed to certain states.
So the body has its own memory of emotions.
It does. By the time we reach our mid-30s, something like 95% of who we are, our behaviors, attitudes, emotional reactions, is subconscious programming. The body literally becomes the mind in many ways, running on autopilot.
Can you give an example?
Think about dialing a familiar phone number without consciously thinking of the digits, or your fingers knowing a password or a combination lock. Your body has memorized it through repetition.
Right, muscle memory.
Yes, but it applies to emotional states too. This leaves our conscious mind, that mere 5%, struggling against this massive 95% subconscious programming. When we try to consciously change, maybe break a habit or react differently, the body often resists.
How does it resist?
It goes into a kind of internal chaos. It generates internal chatter, doubts, fears. You're too tired. This feels wrong. You can't do this. It's the body craving its familiar chemical state, trying to pull you back to the known self, even if that self is unhappy or unhealthy. The servant, the body, has become the master.
And the conscious mind, the master, is asleep at the wheel.
In a manner of speaking, yes. To make real change, you have to get into that subconscious operating system.
Okay, that covers environment and body. What about the third one? How does a relationship with time keep us stuck? It often feels like the past dictates the present.
It very often does. We live tethered to time in a limiting way. Either we're dwelling in the past, replaying old events, re-feeling old emotions, whether good or bad.
Like reliving a past trauma or failure.
Exactly. Or even reliving past successes in a way that stops us moving forward. This conditions the body to physiologically live in that familiar past. Or the alternative is we live in anticipation of the future, but usually based on past fears.
Worrying about something that might happen based on something bad that happened before.
Precisely. So you program your body to live in a predictable, often stressful future now. Either way, your energy, your focus, isn't truly in the present moment the only place where creation can actually happen.
So to break free, we have to think and feel greater than our circumstances, greater than our memorized bodily feelings, and live in a new line of time, not defined by past or predictable future.
That's the essence of it, consciously choosing to create a future that isn't just a rerun of the past.
That's a powerful framework. Let's delve a bit deeper into the mechanics. How do these thoughts and feelings get so ingrained neurochemically? This hamster wheel of being ourselves. How does it actually operate?
It's a fascinating self-perpetuating biochemical feedback loop. It's quite elegant, in a way. Every single thought you have triggers a very specific biochemical reaction in your brain.
Releasing specific chemicals.
Yes, the brain makes chemical messengers, neurotransmitters, neuropeptides, hormones, which are sent instantly to the body. The body receives these messages and complies, creating a physiological state that matches the thought.
So the body starts to feel what the brain is thinking.
Exactly. And then this is the crucial part of the loop. The body sends confirming signals back up to the brain reporting, yep, I'm feeling the way you're thinking. Think of figure 3C.
Which reinforces the initial thought.
Precisely. It creates this continuous cycle. You feel what you think, and then you think what you feel.
So a single negative thought, maybe even an unconscious one, can rapidly cascade into a full-blown physical and emotional state, like a domino effect.
Absolutely. Take an angry thought. The brain releases stress chemicals. The body responds. Heart rate increases. Muscles tense. Maybe you feel hot. Then the body signals back, I'm angry. The brain receives this, monitors the chemical feedback, and generates more angry thoughts.
And the cycle escalates. Irritation becomes rage.
Very quickly. And you get profound physiological changes, pounding head, tight muscles, high blood pressure. Your feelings are now driving your thinking. Your body is effectively controlling your mind. It becomes incredibly hard to consciously break that loop.
And for us in medicine, that loop can easily be amplified by the constant stress, can't it? Leading to chronic states that get really deeply ingrained.
Without a doubt, it becomes the default setting.
You mentioned earlier that by our mid-30s, about 95% of our identity is subconscious programming. How does this concept, the body as a subconscious mind, really lock us in and prevent lasting change?
It explains why sheer willpower often isn't enough. The body becomes the subconscious mind because it has memorized behaviors, attitudes, emotional reactions through endless repetition.
Until it knows them better than the conscious mind does.
Exactly. That's what a habit is. If 95% of who you are by 35 is this set of involuntary programs, memorized reactions, it means that for most of our day, we're effectively unconscious. We might seem awake, but we're running on autopilot.
Driven by these deep programs.
Yes. Which makes change incredibly difficult. That conscious 5% is fighting against a deeply entrenched 95% subconscious program. As I mentioned, when you try to break that internal chemical order, the body resists. It creates that internal chatter, those doubts and fears, trying to pull you back to its familiar chemical fix.
The servant has become the master.
That's a good way to put it. The conscious mind, the former master, has gone to sleep. To truly make lasting changes, you have to get beyond the analytical mind into that subconscious operating system where the programs reside.
Okay. Now, this next point feels particularly relevant for us as medical professionals. We're often taught, or at least implicitly assume, that our health, our predispositions are largely set by our genes. But what does the cutting-edge science of epigenetics tell us about our actual ability to influence our genetic expression? To maybe rewrite our health destiny?
This is a truly revolutionary area. The old idea, genetic determinism, that genes are destiny, that they solely cause disease, is largely being overturned.
It's not that simple.
Far from it. We now know that less than 5% of all diseases are actually caused by single gene disorders, things like Tay-Sachs or Huntington's disease. The vast majority, perhaps 95% or more, are multifactorial.
Meaning lifestyle, environment, stress play a huge role.
A huge role. And this brings us to epigenetics, literally meaning above genetics. It's the study of how the environment, and that includes our internal environment of thoughts and emotions, controls gene activity. It signals the gene from outside the cell.
So it fundamentally shows our genetic destiny isn't fixed. It's responsive, fluid.
Absolutely. The epigenetic paradigm empowers us. It suggests we have incredible free will to influence our own gene activity, to modify our genetic destiny.
How? How do we signal our genes differently?
By changing our internal state, our thoughts, feelings, behaviors, emotional reactions. Making healthier lifestyle choices is part of it, of course. But even more powerfully, reducing chronic stress, cultivating elevated emotions, these things send new signals to our cells.
And the cells respond.
They respond by expressing new proteins. This alters the cell's function and behavior without changing the underlying DNA blueprint itself. The code stays the same, but how it's read, how it's expressed changes dramatically. We can, quite literally, signal our genes to rewrite our future health.
Can we see this in action? Is there a concrete example of our emotional state directly impacting gene expression?
There's a compelling study from Japan that demonstrated this quite clearly. They looked at type 2 diabetic patients, all insulin dependent.
What did they do?
They established baseline fasting blood sugar. Then one group watched a comedy show for an hour. The control group watched a dull lecture. Afterwards, they all had a meal.
And the results?
The lecture group had the typical significant rise in blood sugar needing insulin, but the group that had laughed heartily for an hour, their blood sugar rose by only about half that amount.
Just from laughing.
Yes. But here's the really astonishing part. They examined their gene sequences. The diabetics who laughed had altered 23 different gene expressions related to blood sugar regulation.
Wow. Simply by changing their state of mind through laughter.
Exactly. Their positive emotions had effectively turned on genetic variations that helped their bodies regulate blood sugar more effectively naturally.
That's truly remarkable, the immediate, tangible power of our internal state on something as fundamental as blood sugar.
It is. And think about anecdotes, hair turning gray overnight from extreme stress. That's another dramatic, though extreme example of sudden genetic alteration triggered by emotion.
So the implication for healing is huge. Stress chemicals push us towards illness, dysregulate genes.
But by consciously changing our internal state, thoughts, feelings, reactions, we send new, coherent signals. We can overcome those negative environmental effects on gene expression. We signal new genes in new ways.
Which has profound implications for how we might empower patients, doesn't it? To become active participants in their own healing, beyond just the standard treatments.
It absolutely does. It shifts the focus towards managing the inner environment as much as the outer.
Now, thinking about our own lives as medical professionals, they can be incredibly demanding, stressful environments. How does this constant pressure impact our capacity for change, our physical health, based on these insights? And crucially, how does this framework differentiate between living in survival mode versus creation mode?
This distinction is critical. Living in survival mode is our default response to stress. Real threats, imagined threats, replayed past traumas. It activates the sympathetic nervous system, the fight-or-flight response.
Mobilizing energy for immediate action.
Precisely, yeah. But the problem with humans is our sophisticated neocortex allows us to turn on that stress response just by thought alone. We can re-experience past upsets or worry about future scenarios, keeping the response switched on chronically.
Even when there's no actual tiger chasing us.
Exactly. And this constant state of emergency taxes the entire system relentlessly.
So if all our energy is constantly being funneled towards dealing with these perceived external threats, what happens to internal processes like healing and maintenance? It sounds like there's nothing left.
It's very much like that. A zero-sum game for energy. When you're constantly diverting resources to fight or flee energy to muscles, heightened senses, analytical thinking for crisis mode, your internal housekeeping gets neglected.
So the immune system, digestion, endocrine balance, they all get deprioritized.
They do. There's simply not enough energy left for long-term building, repair, and regeneration. This maladaptive state literally pushes us towards disease. It makes us sick because the body's resources are perpetually allocated to external emergencies rather than internal balance.
And emotionally, what does survival mode feel like?
It grounds us in those lower frequency emotions: anger, fear, suffering, shame, guilt, judgment. These emotions make us feel more physical, denser. We become materialists, focused only on what our senses detect, obsessed with the big three: body, environment, time. We feel separate, disconnected from any sense of greater intelligence or possibility.
And that constant jolt of stress chemicals, you mentioned, it can become addictive.
Yes. That rush of energy, like a strong coffee, can become biochemically addictive. The body gets used to functioning under stress, making it hard to step out of that limited state.
Okay, so that's survival. What about creation mode? What's the energetic and biological shift there?
Creation mode is the opposite. It's about consciously cultivating and living in elevated emotions. Love, joy, gratitude, compassion, wholeness. These are associated with higher frequencies, more energy.
So moving up the emotional scale, as it
Yeah.
were.
When we consciously decide to release those lower frequency survival emotions that have kept us bound, the energy tied up in them gets liberated.
Freeing up resources.
Yes, and that energy naturally ascends towards a higher level of consciousness, closer to possibility, to what you might call universal intelligence. This state is inherently selfless. It's not driven by the ego's needs or external circumstances.
So you stop trying to force outcomes.
You do. You trust in a future you've already visited and felt in your mind and body. It's a state of knowingness, connection. You relax into the unfolding, knowing your internal state is aligned with your desired reality. Your body's energy is then fully available for health, repair, and optimal function. You move from struggle to effortless creation.
That's a profound difference. Now, something many people experience, perhaps especially in demanding roles, is presenting a certain image while feeling quite differently inside. This deep dive talks about the gap. What is that exactly, and why is closing it so crucial for real transformation?
The gap is this duality most of us live with. It's the difference between how we appear, the persona, the identity we project, the ideal self we want others to see. You can imagine that as one hand held out.
The public face.
Yes. And who we really are, how we genuinely feel when the distractions stop, our familiar, often hidden emotions, the parts we conceal. That's the other hand, perhaps hidden behind our back.
And what widens this gap?
Memorized, addictive emotional states, guilt, shame, anger, fear, anxiety, judgment, unworthiness. The more these hidden emotions dominate our inner landscape, the bigger the disparity between the outer persona and the inner reality. Maintaining that facade takes enormous energy.
It sounds exhausting, like wearing a mask all the time. What are the consequences of living with this gap long term, besides the emotional toll?
It often leads to this constant striving, this busyness, to fill an inner void with external things. People, especially maybe in midlife, try to distract themselves. New purchases, holidays, new relationships, cosmetic surgery.
Trying to feel different by changing something outside.
Exactly. Trying something new externally to feel better internally. But when the novelty fades, the emptiness remains. Because the underlying emotional state hasn't been addressed, they revert to who they really are. Technology is a huge factor here, too.
How so?
It offers instant chemical changes. Quick dopamine hits from social media, streaming, gaming. We get temporary relief, altering our internal state via external means. But it fosters dependence on outside stimuli, widens the gap further, and can lead to all sorts of addictive behaviors. Gambling, overeating, screen addiction. We rely on the external to change the internal, never healing the root cause.
So true happiness isn't about those fleeting pleasures.
Not in this context. True, lasting contentment comes from within, from closing that gap.
How do we begin to do that? How do we close the gap and break free from these emotional addictions and superficial fixes? It sounds like quite deep work.
Closing the gap requires transparency, authenticity. How you appear aligns fully with who you are inside. It means consciously confronting and then unmemorizing those self-limiting emotions that have become part of your identity.
Unmemorizing them. How?
While becoming aware of them, observing them without judgment, and consciously choosing not to be defined by them anymore. Disassociating from those old patterns. When you consciously surrender these emotions, let them go, it releases a huge amount of energy that was previously locked up, maintaining the facade and suppressing the feelings.
And that released energy.
It restores a natural state of joy, wholeness, authenticity. It's like a burden lifted. A memory without the emotional charge attached to it simply becomes wisdom. It no longer runs your life. This liberation of energy feels like an upliftment, an inspiration. You can finally just be your true self.
That sounds incredibly liberating, but also challenging, especially for busy professionals with years of ingrained patterns. How do we practically start this process? Unlearning these old programs, cultivating a new self, is there a roadmap?
The most effective way we've found is through a structured process, often involving meditation. It's not just about wishful thinking. It's about actively using the capabilities of our brain, particularly the frontal lobe.
The CEO of the brain.
Exactly. It has two key functions crucial for this kind of change.
Okay, what are they?
Firstly, the frontal lobe is essential for inhibiting the old self. This is the unlearning part. Through metacognition, that ability to observe your own thoughts, behaviors, emotions, as if from the outside.
Self-awareness.
Yes. Your frontal lobe can essentially turn down the volume on those old, unwanted neural networks. You consciously stop the automatic firing related to the old personality. You notice the urge to react in the old way, and you consciously inhibit it. You stop the thought, the action, the emotion.
So you're pruning away the old neurological connections by not using them.
Precisely. You literally begin to lose your mind, the old limited one. It's a deliberate choice not to be that old self anymore.
Okay, that's unlearning. What's the second function?
The second is creating a new mind, the learning process. Once you've made space by inhibiting the old, the frontal lobe helps build the new. It gets activated powerfully by open-ended questions.
Like what?
Questions like, what would it be like to be truly compassionate? Or, what's a better way for me to be in this situation? Or, how would my ideal self respond right now? These questions force the brain to fire in new sequences, make new connections, build new neurological pathways.
And this is where mental rehearsal comes in.
Exactly. By repeatedly imagining and, crucially, feeling yourself as this new, desired self, making that internal experience more real than your external environment, you mind yourself. You install the new software, effectively changing your brain and, consequently, your life.
First, unlearn, then learn. Makes sense. You also mentioned a progression involving three brains thinking, doing, being. Can you elaborate on how they work together in this transformation, thinking figure 6b2 here?
Certainly. These three brains represent stages in embodying change. First is the neocortex, the thinking brain. This is where we acquire knowledge, learn facts and concepts, what we call semantic memories.
So, reading a book about kindness, understanding it intellectually.
Precisely. Knowledge is the precursor. Next comes the limbic brain, the emotional or chemical brain. This is where experience happens. When you apply that knowledge, you actually perform a kind act. You genuinely feel gratitude. The limbic brain processes it, generates the corresponding emotion, and starts creating associative memories.
Connecting the idea to the feeling, conditioning the body.
Yes. You move from knowing about kindness to feeling kindness. This chemically teaches the body what the mind has intellectually understood. Finally, there's the cerebellum, the seat of habits and skills.
The habitual brain.
Right. When you repeat an action or a state of being enough times combining knowledge, instruction, focus, attention, repetition, it becomes second nature, an implicit non-declarative memory. You're no longer consciously thinking about it or even doing it deliberately. You were simply being it.
Like learning to drive. Initially, it's all conscious effort.
Then eventually you are a driver. It's automatic. Mastery, in this context of personal transformation, is when your internal chemical state, your chosen state of being, is so deeply ingrained, so familiar through practice, that it's stronger than any external trigger or circumstance. You can reproduce that state at will.
So you embody the new self unconsciously. That's the goal.
That is the goal, to make it your default state.
That journey from conscious effort to automatic being is fascinating. Now, meditation is presented as a key tool. How does it work neurologically to help us get beyond that analytical mind into the subconscious operating system you mentioned, where these permanent shifts happen, thinking figure 8i?
Meditation's core purpose, in this context, is precisely that: to bypass the analytical mind and gain access to the subconscious to make lasting changes.
How does it achieve that neurologically? Through changing brainwaves, referencing figures 8b, 8c, 8j?
Yes, it's largely about shifting brainwave patterns. Our normal waking state is dominated by beta brainwaves. That's conscious analytical thought, processing the external world. But often, especially under stress, we're in high beta.
Which is chaotic overfocus.
Exactly, like trying to solve a complex problem with alarms blaring. You can't easily process new information, think creatively, or change. Trying to analyze your problems while in high beta just makes it worse, creating higher and higher frequency beta waves. You're stuck analyzing the past or fearing the future.
So how does meditation help us shift out of that stuck beta state?
By intentionally reducing sensory input, closing your eyes, focusing inward, perhaps on your breath. This gives the neocortex, the thinking brain, less external data to analyze. The analytical mind naturally begins to quiet down.
And the brainwaves change.
Yes, you typically shift from beta into alpha waves. Alpha is often seen as the bridge state, where the inner world starts to become more real than the outer world. You're more relaxed, less analytical, more receptive.
A state where imagination feels more vivid.
Exactly. It's where you can effectively plant seeds for new possibilities, visualize new realities within yourself. With more practice, you can move even deeper into theta waves.
Theta, what happens there?
Theta is more trance-like. You're deeply connected to your internal world, the realm of the subconscious. Children operate largely in theta, which is why they're like sponges for information and suggestion. Their analytical filter isn't fully formed. In theta, you can access and reprogram those deep-seated beliefs and patterns because the analytical guard at the gate is relaxed.
So the goal of meditation is to guide yourself through these states, beta to alpha to theta.
Yes, to consciously move into these slower brainwave states. This process helps create brain coherence figure 8K, where different parts of the brain start working in synchrony, in harmony, like an orchestra playing together beautifully instead of chaotically.
And what are the benefits of achieving this brain coherence? How does it lead to tangible results, even spontaneous healing, like you mentioned earlier?
A coherent brain sends a coherent, synchronized signal throughout the body. This helps organize all the body's systems into homeostasis, that state of optimal balance and function. Cardiovascular, immune, digestive, endocrine systems all start working together more harmoniously.
And the energy aspect.
Crucially, the huge amount of energy that was previously being consumed by the stress response in survival mode is now liberated. It becomes available for growth, repair, creation, and healing.
Which could explain spontaneous changes.
It could certainly contribute. Remember Jose's warts? 10 persistent viral warts vanishing overnight after his first meditation.
That's incredible.
He shifted his mind from disorder to order, from incoherence to coherence. The intelligence within his body responded by restoring order physically. It suggests that when the mind is coherent, the body can follow suit, sometimes dramatically. It's not magic, it's physiology responding to a change in energetic signaling.
These concepts are incredibly powerful. But moving beyond anecdotes, do we have examples of ordinary people applying these principles consistently to create extraordinary, lasting changes? We've heard the theory. How does it play out?
Absolutely. There are many compelling examples. Take Monique, a therapist from Montreal. She described herself as living most of her adult life in a state of lack. Not enough money, time, energy, financial struggles, issues with child support, rising rent.
A familiar story for many.
Indeed. During a meditation, she had this powerful realization that she had completely memorized a woe-is-me personality rooted in this feeling of lack. She decided, with real conviction, to change that personality entirely.
To become someone else internally.
Yes, to intend to be and feel like a woman who lived with an abundance of energy, time, money. She created a clear vision for this new self.
So she wasn't just thinking about abundance, she was actively trying to be abundant, shifting her whole state.
Precisely. She started living from that perspective, feeling the emotions of abundance before it showed up externally. Weeks later, a client mentioned the French lottery. Later, while filling her car, on a sudden impulse, the kind of impulse the new Monique might have, trusting possibility, she bought a ticket. Yeah. The old Monique would have dismissed it as irresponsible. She forgot about it until her husband came rushing in telling her she'd won. Not millions, but exactly $53,000, which just happened to be the precise amount needed to clear all her outstanding debts.
Wow. That's incredibly specific.
It beautifully illustrates the principle. A new personality creates a new personal reality. And the quantum field often delivers in ways we can't predict, but which are perfectly resonant with our coherent signal. Her new internal state aligned her actions, and the field responded.
That's a fantastic example of manifesting something tangible. What about profound health transformations, especially in challenging cases?
Consider Bill, a 57-year-old roofing contractor with recurrent malignant melanoma. Multiple surgeries, radiation, chemo, but it kept returning.
A very difficult situation.
Very. During a deep meditation, Bill had a breakthrough. He realized he'd been trapped in deep-seated resentment for over 30 years, feeling he'd always had to give up his dream being a musician for others. He had so thoroughly memorized this bitterness, this emotional pattern.
That his body was literally living in that chemical past, contributing to the illness.
That was his insight, yes. That the sustained negative emotion was perhaps even signaling the genes that supported the cancer's persistence. So in his daily meditations, he consciously worked on unmemorizing that bitterness, releasing the emotional charge.
Now replacing it with what?
He actively envisioned himself healthy. He cultivated profound gratitude, feeling as if the healing had already happened. He managed to change his internal state to be greater than his physical condition, feeling the joy of health before it was physically real.
And the outcome?
Shortly after returning home from a workshop, the tumor on his calf just fell off. Within a week, tests showed he was cancer-free, and he remained so. By firing his brain differently, cultivating elevated emotions, he changed biologically. He signaled new genes in new ways. The cancer, in essence, couldn't survive in his new internal environment, his new coherent self.
That's a powerful testament to the connection between releasing bound emotional energy and physical healing.
It really is. It shows how unmemorizing the past can directly impact the present biology.
And finally, are there examples of people sustaining this shift, maintaining high coherence even amidst external chaos? That seems key, especially for those in high-stress professions.
Absolutely. The University of Wisconsin study on experienced Buddhist monks, the super meditators, is a classic example.
What do they find?
These monks could generate incredibly coherent brainwave patterns, especially gamma waves associated with states like loving kindness and compassion during meditation. But what was truly remarkable was that they could maintain these coherent patterns even after meditation, while going about tasks in the noisy, distracting external world.
So their internal state wasn't dependent on quiet or ideal circumstances?
Exactly. They demonstrated a mastery of their internal state, independent of external chaos. They weren't reacting to the environment, they were creating from within. Their inner coherence remained stable. This is really the ultimate goal, isn't it?
To embody a state where your internal world is consistently greater than your external world.
Precisely. Allowing you to navigate challenges from a place of inner peace, resilience, and creative power. it is achievable.
What incredible insights we've explored today. Just to try and summarize, it seems profoundly clear that our mind and body are absolutely inseparable. They're intricately linked.
A unified system.
Yes. And by consciously changing our thoughts, our feelings, our overall state of being, we really can influence our health, maybe even our genetic expression, and potentially manifest desired realities,
It shifts us from feeling like victims of circumstance.
to becoming conscious creators of our lives.
Huh?
It's incredibly empowering, suggesting we can impact our own well-being and perhaps guide our patients in ways we're only just beginning to fully appreciate.
It opens up a whole new dimension to health and healing.
We really hope this deep dive has sparked some new ways of thinking for you, especially for those of you navigating the complexities of medicine and your own demanding lives.
Hopefully some practical insights, too.
Indeed. If you found value in our conversation today, please do consider taking just a moment to rate and share our deep dive with a colleague who might also find these ideas beneficial.
We'd appreciate that.
And finally, just a thought to leave you with. If your brain and body truly don't distinguish between a vividly imagined and felt experience and a real one, what powerful new realities might you begin to create starting today, simply by cultivating the feelings of your desired future right here in the present moment?